Welcome to episode 184 of the Left Behind Game Club. This week we continue our Life is Strange True Colors series with part 2. Let's get right into it.
You're listening to the Left Behind Game Club.
Welcome to the Left Behind Game Club, our never-ending attempt to make sure that no game is left behind. I'm your host, Jacob McCourt, and today I have two friends with me. The first friend, you know her, you love her. Her name is Katie Lesperance.
Hello, I'm back.
Hi, you're back. We're bringing the energy with Ms. Flora Marigold. Hello.
Yee, and I cannot stress this enough. Haw.
Love. Today we are continuing part 2 of our Life is Strange True Color series with lanterns. If you have not listened to part 1, you may want to do that. Just go back to episode 183 and listen to that old thing. It was with Luke and Claire, who will be back. They are just on vacation, and we're continuing the series while they are away. It's going to be like a rotating couch, so I don't think I'm going to be on the next one, and then you'll get a great crew of people. Who's going to host? Who knows? We'll figure it out. Part 2. It starts with the wake. It made me sad. How did it make y'all feel?
Well, apparently Gabe's dead, so...
Did you know Gabe's dead?
Say that. Yeah.
No, because I was holding on hope after the end of the last episode of this podcast. I was like, we don't know that he's dead, though. Like, he could just be buried down there, you know, like Until Dawn style. He's, like, stuck in a mine. And if they don't wait 5 years, maybe they'll get him out and he'll be okay. But nope. They have like the funeral picture, the big portrait up, and I'm like, oh, I guess he's dead. So much for that.
Katie, I think you're a little hopeful because that man got yeeted by a boulder, and there is a 0% chance. Like, you're in the health field, you're a medical professional, right? Give me the prognosis if he gets yeeted by a boulder in the head.
This is a game with magical powers. In old episodes, we've gone back in time. We've gone to parallel universes where other people are alive and other people are dead. Well, that doesn't mean anything. You're acting like this is, I don't know, something realistic. I'm trying to think of a realistic game. But apparently it is because it killed him real good, and everyone's sad.
Yeah. Real somber. Alex's outfit was really good, but that's probably a really inappropriate time to say that.
I mean, to be fair, this entire game, all of her outfits are kind of popping, so...
Yeah, I got the physical edition that came with some extra costumes, and I definitely used them this time around. Was like, her fits are always so good. Anything you want to cover? I think for me, like the seeing everyone interact and seeing their auras as Alex, to just see how everyone had feelings and how that impacted Alex was neat. As terrible as that is to say, like somebody died and everybody's got feelings, but it was really neat in that moment to be her and almost feel overloaded at the fact that everybody has feelings to the point where she needed to leave the wake.
Yeah, I felt like this scene, largely Alex was sort of in the background, and you could almost forget that she was part of the scene, if not for the fact that the scene closes by her running away from it. So much of the scene is going back and forth on these like panning camera angles of kind of the hot-headedness of people at Gabe's wake. There's some like funny punctuations from, I think his name is Ducky, like the older guy, and he's like continuing on his old man tale that's like broken up intermittently. I really liked that.
He made me laugh exactly 14 times. Here are the 14 times he made me laugh.
Yeah, and he's like, and on the 7th time, which I did appreciate that. But it was interesting to see which characters had the hotheads and which ones didn't, because I think when this game immediately bills itself as a little bit of like we're going to investigate this character's death sort of mystery, that makes me start to interrogate all of the characters and look at who is hot and who is not hot-headed. So I think that this scene serves as a really good like kind of primer for that.
Yeah, it like basically lays out all the characters in front of you, and like you kind of get not your suspects, because I didn't really think that any of the people in the room were responsible, even though there was a possibility that somebody was. But I was like, nah, this isn't like a row of suspects, but this is more just like, this is a sum up of the town. Like, these are your main characters. They're all in the same room. They are all reacting to the same thing differently. They're all interacting with each other. It was kind of a good kind of a good summary of the first chapter of like all the different people you met, and like, okay, let's get most of them in a room now and see what's going on.
And I'm sure this happens only for like budget/development reasons, but I would like to maybe have seen more characters that we had not yet met in Gabe's wake, because this is only chapter one characters. It might have been cool, considering how much of an impression we get of Gabe being this amazing person, to see people who we didn't have a chance to meet already in episode 1 show up here, and then later they become more prominent. But the game chooses not to do that. It's only people we've met so far. And therefore, I agree. It does feel very like a summary, like last time, previously on Life is Strange, True Colors.
I think the thing that maybe bothered me the most out of this whole thing is if you go on the cell phone, which I don't know if y'all did, Jed essentially invites Alex to the wake at like 7:30, an hour and a half before the actual wake takes place. I'm like, that's this man's brother. Can you not just send a "hey, you up" text to be like, come celebrate your brother's life?
I love that the punctuality and planning is what bothers you, which feels very appropriate, because if you make plans, if you make like forward plans with Jacob, if you're like, hey, next week, wanna go for a drink or something, like mid next week, he'll be like, yeah, sure, great. The next day, he's like, so where do you want to go? We could go to this place or this place or this place or this place. And I'm like, I'm gonna plan this maybe the day before or maybe the day of. So it's spot on that Jacob is like, how dare he plan this so shortly before? But I was like, yeah, all right. He threw it together. He tried to do a nice thing at the last minute.
Good, Katie, you got me for sure. I do live and die by my calendar. That is my
respect.
Yeah, respect.
And I fail to accomplish things all the time because I procrastinate. So, you do you.
It's my greatest strength and my greatest weakness. Spontaneity, I don't know her. But I think you guys mentioned the Mac thing here. Are your feelings towards Mac changing at all? Because I could tell that something was going on as much as like I know what happened because we played the whole episode. In that moment, I was like, Mac is guilty, but I don't know if it's because it's his fault or because something else is going on. I don't know if, hindsight's 20/20, but if you had those thoughts starting there.
I think I'm a little suspicious of how heavy-handedly the game hands you, like, Mac prompts, because this whole wake scene, like, when Alex does have a chance to say anything, it's basically either blame Mac or be a little bit nicer about it. And that tells me, at least from a writing perspective, that the game is trying to really get me to side against Mac, and that makes my instinct as a player want to push back against that narrative device. It kind of reminds me of how, like, in this Stanley parable, when I first played it, like, it was like Stanley went through the door on the right or the left. I forget which one. And then I was like, wait a second, I have an option here. I should do the other one. And I feel like as a player, when I'm reading character motivations, and especially thinking about Life is Strange 1, Mac reminds me of the Nathan character. I think we kind of talked a little bit about that last time. And Nathan was so archetypally hateable. He's like comic book character level evil, like in the beginning, waving a gun around and screaming threats. I feel like Mac is sort of built that way in the beginning as well. And so I don't know, Katie, did you feel like the game is trying like maybe too hard to get me to dislike this guy? Or did you feel maybe a little more redemptive on your own?
I thought that it was very apparent what story we're trying to tell and what forks in the road are happening early. I don't know where we're gonna go, but it's like, oh yes, Mac is the center of this problem at this point. I don't feel differently about him. I feel about the same. I didn't think that he was this irredeemable evil human. I think that he's extremely flawed and is a toxic component of a relationship, and that he needs to learn about himself and learn how to be a better person all around. But am I like, no, Mac's a cold-hearted murderer? No. Like, that's just a very big stretch, and that would be too obvious. Like, oh, this is the guy who's kind of emotionally abusive to his girlfriend. Therefore, he murdered Gabe. Like, no. We're painting the only villain, basically. So yeah. I'm like, where's the other villain going to be? Because it can't possibly be the obvious one from chapter 1.
No, it's Typhon Mines. It's the mining corp. Like, come on now.
Which almost feels like a second too obvious of like, no, it's not Mac. Actually, it's capitalism overtaking this town, and that's the villain. And I'm like, well, it is chapter 2 now. Am I going to have a different villain in chapter 3 and a different villain in chapter 4? Is there actually like an evil sorcerer who leads Typhon and has brainwashed the company? I don't know. Probably not. But it didn't lead me to go like, oh, we're leaving one obvious villain for kind of the next obvious villain. And I think that villain is a lot easier to manage and to do ridiculous things with because it's not a person, right?
Yeah.
It's a company. And you can say a company is evil, and that's a lot less cartoonish than having an evil character. So I don't know. It kind of seems easy so far, like easy storytelling a little bit. The details are interesting, but the overall plot is kind of
I think the worst thing you could say about Mac is that maybe he's a rat, like a coward rat boy, that he's spineless and gutless and is really like all about self-preservation. I don't think he's fundamentally evil. He's just a whiny little shit.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that like
I guess we don't. I forgot we don't swear on this show.
Now we do.
I think we forgot last episode too.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, it's been a while. You know who I've come to like more in this episode? Segue is Steph. You have a moment in your apartment. So obviously you get overwhelmed. You go up into your apartment. The gay agenda strikes again. And we go up and Steph is obviously very distraught. You see foosball champion wrapped around a Mickey of alcohol. And you start to, go around the room and see objects representing Alex and her's relationship, and get to foosball. I want to hear y'all's thoughts about this whole section. But I need to know, are you foosball fans? Are you foosball players? Because that comes into play here.
I mean,
Katie, you strike me as a foosballer.
I mean, I'm not like an avid foosballer, but if there is foos to be played and I have a willing combatant, absolutely I will foos. I won't turn down a good foos.
When you worked at the pizza place, was there a foosball table?
No, I made pizzas. What do you think we do? People work.
You go on break and you make pizzas just like they do in the sitcoms, right?
No, you just keep making pizzas all the time.
Okay.
You never stop making pizzas.
Right, capitalism, I forgot.
Strikes again.
Bringing it back. Yeah, got us again. Flora, you big foozer?
I haven't really played much in my adult life, but I remember I had like a before school and extended day after school sort of thing because my mom worked long hours growing up. So like I played in grade school quite a bit. I will say I'm not competitive at all. Like I don't have a single competitive bone in my body. And so it never like hooked me in the sort of way that it did like in this more gamified sense in this episode where there's like narrative wrapped around it. But like I remember the fumbly feeling of it really, really well. And I thought that it was kind of fun how the game turned it into a video gamey thing with like the trigger inputs in this episode.
I am fairly competitive, to say the least.
No.
So I won my first 2 games, and then the third game happened, and then I was like, I cannot lose. And I got up like 4-1, and then slowly lost my lead, and then panicked more and more and more. And I thought, this is like the one thing that would make me consider restarting the game is that I lost this damn foosball game. No, I panicked. I like yelled out. Like I was like, nah, when I lost. It was very upsetting. I did not restart the game. I stuck with it. But no, I'm the exact opposite. I was like, something to beat somebody at. Let's go.
Yeah, I didn't love the controls here, and I think if it was designed this way because foosball is sort of a fumbly table sport, sure. But I felt most of the time like I was struggling with the controls more than I was actually struggling with the competition of Steph. But then the thing that threw me was at some point in the middle of the games too, she like throws out the sexuality question of like, do you like girls? Like, she's just very blunt about it, and I'm just like, I have to answer now. This is how I have to answer how I'm gonna play this entire game. And obviously I picked the bi/pan option, which was I like everybody. I don't know, I just have a fondness for the Schitt's Creek David line about like, it's not about the wine, it's about the it's not about the label, it's about the wine, and so that reminded me of this for some reason. So I was like, okay, I will be pan/bi here, which means the gay agenda strikes again.
It's inescapable. When going into this game, like I said last episode, I knew that this character Steph was coming into this game, and that there would be 2 romanceable characters at least in this story. And I don't really remember Steph like throwing all those questions out rapid fire when I first played it, but this time I was taking the foosball so seriously that I was trying to win, and then I didn't answer the first question because I was just trying to like get the controls right. But with the do you like girls question, that was like I wonder if I say no to this, what that's gonna do. Will this close off the romance path for this character for the rest of the game? I won't say anything for now, but that's something we could revisit later in the series.
I'm going to throw something out there because there's on the Facebook equivalent in your phone, there's a new person coming to the community. I think his name is Jack. Is his name Jack? I'm like, oh, is this going to be the romanceable character on the male side, or is it just Ryan? Am I going to fall for this?
It's Ryan, right?
Okay.
It's got to be Ryan.
Yeah. The broody lumberjack man, yes.
Yeah. I appreciate the strategy of mid foosball, and when you're far enough in and you're like really getting into it, and then she just says, so are you into girls? And I was like, whoa. And I do love, the game doesn't stop, the game is happening, and then with your paddles, and then you have to like answer. I went with the like pan/bi answer because I want to keep my options open. I'm not closing off options this early in a game. Like, we know I have commitment issues, so it was the obvious
I love
answer.
how you and I are like min-maxing the sexuality here by just leaving it open. You then clean up the apartment a little bit. You might change your clothes. And then this one sort of gets open in a way that I wasn't expecting, that you can sort of choose your own adventure and decide what you want to do. You could go up to the roof, to the terrace as an optional thing. You can then you go down to the bar, and like Jed decides he's a very nice old man, which warmed my heart for him to be like, hey, the apartment's yours, however long you want. Don't worry about it. I'm here for you. What a sweetie baby.
It'd be harsh to evict the girl whose brother just died. That'd be
I like how you're
rough.
pragmatic here.
It'd be a tough move.
Min-maxing the ethics of evicting
Yes.
someone still in mourning. I don't know if any of you walked around the bar or the rooftop for the sake of looking for those optional collectibles, like those memories and whatnot, but one thing that I did enjoy on episode 2 that in my first playthrough I didn't even touch was the button that you find on the rooftop. It's apparently some old punk band that like Steph and this other character used to be a part of, and we learned that Steph, over the course of this episode, was wanting to leave Haven Springs, and Gabe is like the only reason that he was able to talk her into staying. And when you examine the button on the rooftop, you learn that like there was this like trans character in this band, and like this person was feeling super, super like isolated by the fact that Steph was gonna leave, and they like ended on like bad terms because of this. I'd never picked up on that thread, and I wonder if that's going to continue elsewhere. But there were a couple other memories in the bar. There was like a rent check sitting there that was never cashed, a couple other little details. Again, I was surprised at how many of those were packed in this like first few minutes of this episode. But like you say, Jacob, it's because it's a sort of like open plan, choose your own adventure. Like they know you're not really going to go looking in every nook and cranny, or maybe not everyone would be.
Yeah, I like that it was more open and free to a point, like more so than the OG Life is Strange, which is the only other one that I've played, which is more, this is the tight environment. You have a hallway and there's some rooms you can go into, and you can go into rooms as you want and investigate as you want, and you can or you can just kind of zip through and go straight to your objective. This just kind of like broadened that out a bit into the town. And also, yeah, it found I feel like every location was packed with enough stuff that was interesting. I felt like even though like the little comments that she's making about everything is varying degrees of how interesting it is, but always interesting enough that I want to look at everything. Because there's some nuggets in there. Also, the punk band that she was in was called Drugstore Makeup, which is such a good like riot girl punk band title. I was like, oh my god, Drugstore Makeup, that's so funny. It's so silly. All the band names are like the invented band names are great. Love them.
Well, there was another one, and I don't know if it was in a past memory or it was in the present. I can't remember, where they're playing a record, and I think it's in the record shop, and they're like, yo, isn't this so sick? The guitarist has one arm. So just like the small details of the bands always gets me so excited. Just music in this whole game makes me happy. And then the Denver, you get some information if you don't go look around of like, hey, she got a radio job, I think is sort of the vibe in Denver, but it was really like that relationship between the two of them that made her stay. Nobody gets jobs in radio, so I was surprised and happy for her. But sad that I missed the terrace. I only realized that I didn't go to the terrace when I looked at the end screen and there was way more choices that I didn't realize. I saved it, so I'll show you how many. I'll while we're talking about the next step here, I'll pull up how many people looked at the terrace, because I assume it's not that many.
Yeah, there's a lot of like overlooked things.
I guess I need to know, and Flora, maybe we'll start with you, is what is the first thing that you did in the list of sort of optional things that you could do in town?
Well, I was looking with a walkthrough open, so that sort of influenced how I walked around the town. I think I did sort of everything and like clean sweeped every nook and cranny. If there was something I could look at, I looked at it first playthrough. This time I was a lot more instrumental in sort of going from point A to B. And so for me, that involved going from the record store, because there's this guy who's got a hoodie on, and he's super upset about this girl named Chrissy.
You mean hoodie guy?
Yeah, hoodie guy. And you, the way that he's talking, or like his inner monologue, Alex picks it up like, oh, this guy's going through a bad breakup. Turns out he's lost his dog, and you just have to like turn around in the record shop and look at the bulletin board and solve his problem really easily. And I ended up going from like that as my initial point over to, there was this bird watcher lady. You help her find the species she's looking for, and then I went back around to the dispensary. I had forgotten what happened there, which pretty major choice for this episode, and then eventually the flower shop.
I thought it was really surprising that the side missions, because there's basically the things you can run into, like hoodie guy or birdwatcher lady, that you just kind of run into and have a short little interaction. But then there's the listed side missions of go to the dispensary and talk to, I forget, Charlotte, maybe. Go to the record store and talk to Steph. And they seemed fairly crucial. Like, I'm pretty surprised that it was side missions. I mean, I guess if you want the game to be able to be played very quickly, you make them side, like, optional, but I don't see why you would do that. It's not like it's a long game. So yeah, I'm just surprised. I was like, oh, you have to do the side missions, like the listed side missions, because they feel really, really important. Like, they fleshed out Steph a little bit, but also this whole LARPing thing that they're talking about feels important. And then in the dispensary, you have like a critical decision and advice to give Charlotte about, because Typhon is trying to pay her off, basically, to like zip it and let this, not mention this again, basically. And you'd basically tell her, either take the money, it'll help you and Ethan, your kid, or no, they're clearly up to something, or else they wouldn't be paying you off. Don't take it. And I was very surprised that would be listed as optional.
I was looking at a wiki for this episode, and at the time that this was released, I don't have a date on publication here, but it said the three options there is basically to tell Charlotte to not take the money, to take the money, or the percentage of players who had not even like given her the option. Charlotte will just take the money anyway. and it said at the time 0% of characters did that. So I think it's incredibly unlikely. But I've never seen a 0% in a Life is Strange game. I'm sure it's not really 0 by now. It can't be.
So on my screen that I have up right here, it was 40% of characters had Charlotte sign the agreement. So a release to say, hey, you probably won't sue us for a bucket of money. Saying not to take the money was 60%. And on the Xbox console, 0% said sign the agreement after Alex didn't visit her. So also 0% in the game
That feels impossible.
Yeah, either it's not really an option or like I don't know how else to think about that.
Because you'll have people who just fire up the credits, the opening credits of a game, then shut it down forever. There's games where no trophies are ever obtained. There's tons and tons of options. That's all.
Yeah, because looking at some of these side missions, like the Birdwatcher, 67%. So 2/3 of players didn't.
I missed the Birdwatcher entirely.
Didn't do the Birdwatcher. Like half the people didn't clean the room. Almost half the players didn't go to the dock. So some of these side missions were not done, but it seems like most of the critical ones, probably the ones, to your point, Katie, that are in the side mission or in the menu, folks probably did at least some of them or all of them, because it gives you that nice dopamine hit of checking it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's good that it's more open and you can wander around a little bit more and you get more of a flavor of the town. But it's also not too open. It's not overwhelmingly large, which I really, really appreciate, where they're just packing things that are less and less interesting just to fill up space. It's no, this is the space. You can explore this space, but it's bigger than previous Life is Strange's.
Mm-hmm. Because we've sort of touched on it, Charlotte, the decision of take the money, not take the money. I told her take the money. I don't know how y'all did here. Flora, did you say take the money?
I think originally I did say take the money. Here I said no, and it's mostly just because I'm trying to play things differently to see how different things are in this playthrough. I'm trying to be a little bit like cop Alex. I ratted out Ethan in the beginning, and here I'm like, no, you can't take them. That's the wrong thing to. So anyway.
I wanted more information. I was like, I can't possibly answer this question. What are your financials like? What is what kind of revenue does this dispensary bring in? I need to know these things, or are you failing and this is the only way that you're not going to end up, living in a cardboard box in an alley? I want to know, but ultimately I just went with no, don't take the money, because I'm like, I just think it's, I don't know, for my own self, it was more interesting. I was like, no, they're up to something. We're going to get them, I think. Or I've just led her to financial ruin, one of the two.
Ethan's going to become a starving orphan over in the corner outside, begging for alms.
Do you find yourself playing older games and wishing that there were new discussions about those games? Enter Tales from the Backlog. Hi, I'm Dave Jackson, and on each episode, I'm joined by a guest to break down those games that may be stuck in your ever-expanding backlog. Each episode looks at one game in depth, focusing on mechanics, story, music, and other aspects with no spoilers until a clearly marked spoiler wall in the middle. If you've played the game, go ahead and climb that spoiler wall and enjoy in-depth story discussions, and if not, jump out when we warn you and maybe go play that game for yourself. We have over 100 episodes in the feed, everything from Disco Elysium to Tunic to discussion episodes about how to get into horror games, and if games actually need to be fun, or if they have more to offer. I guarantee that there's something in there for everybody. Once again, that's Tales from the Backlog, available wherever your podcasts are found.
More important question, though. Did y'all pick Alwyn as your character's name because of Joe Alwyn, Taylor Swift's ex-boyfriend?
No, not because of that. I was just like, that's the most LARPy-sounding Elvish name. That's what I went with. The other ones I just did not think were adequate. So I went with Alwyn because it sounded Lord of the Rings-y. I was not thinking of Joe Alwyn.
Okay.
I'm a recently converted Swiftie here. This is news to me. I don't have the encyclopedia of Taylor Swift's exes, but I better start doing my homework. I originally in the playthrough went with Alto, and that sort of fit with the both D&D vibe, but also the musical sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then this time I just went with Alexandra. I didn't see the Alwyn option this time. I don't know why that was, but it felt wrong. It almost felt like calling someone by their dead name or something when I picked it. I didn't like how it felt, but again, just trying to do things differently this run.
I guess I'm the most hardcore Swiftie on this podcast.
No.
Not for long.
No.
I reject that notion. I will fight you.
Eleanor at the flower shop, I think, is something that we need to dive in on because it is I don't want to say impactful, but I think it's a really important section where Eleanor, flower shop owner, you notice that something is off with her and sort of use your aura to see what's happening. And man, what a saddening state of affairs that was.
Question for both of you. When did you notice something was off with Eleanor? I'm really curious when you picked up on that, because the game spells it out directly as you play, but I think you can pick it up as early as the beginning of this episode if you really think about it. I'm just wondering when it occurred to you that something's off with Eleanor. Katie?
As soon as she kind of looked away at nothing and kind of had that glazed look at her eye, and I thought it was actually a very good for a video game. For this game, I thought it was a very good representation. Like instantly I was like, oh, she has early onset dementia, or like early stage dementia. Like I knew right away. And then, which is often the case with most of the characters, is that like they'll kind of be showing the emotion and then the color happens and you're like, yeah, I would have noticed anyway that they were angry. But yeah, so does she act strangely like at the beginning, like in the bar or something? Jacob, when did you notice?
I think for me it was the glazed look combined with the phone. Those were the two things that I went, oh, this is dementia. Mm-hmm. It was, hey, something's off, and then I saw the phone and went, oh yeah, this is dementia. And I think about the ways that we depict mental health illnesses and mental health conditions like dementia, and when I think of this is probably up there for depictions of like mental health conditions, because I knew immediately, I'm like, oh no, she has dementia just based on the phone.
Yeah, it's usually they're portrayed, people with dementia, in the rare time that they're in video games, but usually they're portrayed as kind of not being aware that they have dementia, or being like, oh yeah, my wife, and they're like, and you know that their wife's dead, but they're talking about her as if she's around, or like they're not aware that they're forgetting things. This is why this one is so affecting, is because it makes it more, it brings to light that experience of like, often mental illness, you're aware, and that makes it even far scarier than if you aren't aware. But yeah, people have developed dementia, and they know, and they're like, they're forgetting things, and there's denial, there's grief with that, like there's frustration, there's anger, there's so much to unpack with that. And as soon as she was frantic and clearly scared because she didn't remember, I'm like, oh, this is so sad. Like see it in books sometimes. There's a couple of books. There's I think Still Alice, and there's another one. But that kind of dig into that of like knowing that you're losing your memory and your wherewithal and how that feels. But you don't really see it in games very often. So yeah, no, I appreciated that whole scene. I don't know how I appreciated walking through her steps of her day. I was like, I don't know how this is coming together. Like, you didn't solve her problem, you know? It's like, yeah, you helped her with this one thing. I don't know. But I'm sure it'll develop further. It's only chapter 2.
They gamied it hard in that moment.
Yeah,
like,
it really gamed it.
This was good until I had to game it.
Yeah, a little bit. It felt a little gamey. But the whole situation I thought was just really interesting, something to bring in.
Just to circle back on something, Katie, you mentioned like in the beginning, Eleanor was not actually present at the wake, which is like something that I think if you cue into that, like she's really a part of this.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
like, Riley is there, so like her daughter would have known, and like everyone else theoretically would have known. But then like that didn't tip me off first playthrough. The thing when you walk in and she greets Alex all like cheerfully, like nothing has happened.
Yeah,
that was immediately like a wait a second, this should be a little more somber, because every other interaction I've had has been with someone who's been here. We haven't exchanged words about this, and literally just yesterday Gabe was buying flowers from this store. So like I just think it's interesting how that can be picked up. Now, I love that both of you seem to think that this is like a unique or maybe successful portrayal of like Alzheimer's dementia, because I think that there's room to maybe push back on that and say that this is like, in the way, I think we talked about this with the original Life is Strange series, how like Chloe's disability gets framed as like a moral dilemma for the player to themselves interject and solve. There's something a little bit off-putting here about turning like dementia into like a solvable moral dilemma.
Yes,
like, do
exactly.
you tell her Eleanor about Gabe or not? And like that is the end of it. Or like put together her day and the dementia is solved. Like neither one of those really felt great to be gamified for me. But at the same time, there were some really effective things. Like I loved how the opened and closed sign on the front of the shop, you go and examine it midway through, and all of a sudden the letters get scrambled. And like you look at the photograph of Eleanor and Riley, and then Riley's face gets blanked out. From what I understand, those are like very real things that do happen, and seeing them represented in that sort of like symbolic or abstract artistic way, I did think that was really effective. I just wonder if everyone's going to receive this as like, yeah, this works for me, because it might come across maybe like, I don't want to say insensitive. I don't think that's the right word, but something akin to that. I did not, in the original playthrough, tell Eleanor anything about what happened to Gabe, but in this playthrough, I did. I felt like sort of the right thing to do for me.
I also told her, but I kind of reasoned it as, so she's going to have to learn it again at some point, and better to hear it from me while she's alone in her store and not like out in the street and someone tells her and she has to experience that like amongst a lot of people, or not in private, not somewhere where she can go, try and cope with it. So I'm like, well, this is as good a time as any, I guess. Like we got to do this at some point. So I'll do it now. But yeah, it didn't feel good.
Yeah, I think I had like a similar reaction where I was, hey, I'm going to treat her about as normally as I can, given the circumstances where I know what is happening and she doesn't know that I know. And so I will just tell her, as devastating as it will be, I just want this to sort of be as normal as possible. And it was devastating. Yeah. And to your point, Flora, like the gaminess I think was like heavy handed. Yeah. But the portrayals, just to like, I think you're totally right. The portrayals of Alzheimer's or dementia here, I think, are the admirable part, that they just like so accurately, not admirable, maybe poor choice of word, but so accurately, clearly spoke to folks who were experts in the field and implemented this in a game. I can't remember another time I saw dementia or Alzheimer's portrayed in a game like this.
Not like this. There is a small indie game that basically puts you in the shoes of somebody who has dementia, who you're just trying to do basic stuff around your house, and then it's like you're getting turned around and all of a sudden you're going back to where you thought was the bathroom, but now that's not the bathroom, and then you're like lost in your own home and things like that. It's been touched on, not in a game this commercial. Like I think that was an indie project where the goal is to portray dementia and the effect that has, but not in a game like this. That's funsies. It's supposed to be funsies. Before I forget? It's not.
Is that game Before I Forget?
Maybe.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the gaminess is weird. I was like, oh, we're not fixing her. We're not fixing her problem. We're just kind of like getting what we need from her. It was weird. But so this also, though, brought in like a gameplay mechanic that, like, it brought back the gameplay mechanic that was introduced with Steph in the apartment, where now you're not just like seeing their emotion and hearing their thoughts, but you are like going into their kind of like mind space. Like the apartment with Steph, things were different. There are things in different places that reflect like stuff that she used to do with Gabe. So it changes the environment around you. So now we are doing the same thing. We're like going into kind of Eleanor's mind, and not only is like things different, but it's showing the effects of the dementia. Like you can see that within the environment, which is the words that are like, the letters are jumbled, the clock is just kind of spinning around, you don't know what time it is. There's like weird numbers everywhere, the phones all has numbers all over the place. So it was interesting. I was like, okay, every time we're doing this and we're adding layers, which is what I want. I'm like, I don't want to just, kind of feel repetitive. Like, oh, now we're in this person's mind, we're doing the things. It's like, no, each time now I'm going to be like, oh, it's different. And I hope we keep expanding on that.
The final sequences of this, there's like 2 more sections. The penultimate sequence involves Riley and Mac. And so you finally, after you go through the side missions, decide, okay, I'm going to confront Mac. But in order to do so, you need to get some information to sort of crack his armor, and that comes from Riley. I don't know about y'all, but I had a hard time finding Riley.
I Googled where Riley was. I totally Googled it. I was like, I am not wandering around this town looking for this girl. I was like, where is Riley chapter 2? And I found her instantly that way. But no, I didn't want to do that either.
I went around town like a bunch, and then went, nope, I need to know where she is. Down an alley, I guess.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That was like functionally ridiculous, and you would think the logical place to put her would be in any of the shops that you've just spent the whole episode in, like building these relationships. But no, just some side alley. Could be anywhere.
Anywhere.
Silliness.
With Riley, she's sitting on a bench. You ask her a couple of questions, like essentially it's like characters to ask about, like, hey, what's going on with Eleanor? What's going on with Mac? What's going on with Gabe? And you end up getting an option that is like, hey, Mac is acting very weird, and that's the thing that sort of pushes things forward. You approach Mac with that information, and I think my favorite part of this whole episode, apart from foosball sexuality, as I will call it, is the camera moment. Is the moment where you use your aura to go inside of Mac and realize that he's paranoid about the whole situation.
Oh, yes.
And at some point, like, the Typhon mining camera comes in and looks at you. So good, and I was shocked, and that's like my favorite part of the whole episode, I think.
I thought it was
such
neat.
A cool little detail. I wasn't expecting it.
I thought it was neat. I was like, oh, we're seeing things from a different point of view, which we haven't done yet. But yeah, you're seeing yourself as if through like a security camera, like a monitor, as if somebody is watching a monitor and seeing Alex in the street. It was cool. I was like, the more things that we kind of add on here and the more different perspectives we get and the more different details we get, the more interested I am, because we could easily kind of be stuck in the same little space. But we just keep developing on things, which I appreciate.
I think this must have been a glitch, but this second playthrough, my screen went completely black during that.
What?
Once I read Nathan, it just was black screen for me. And I'm wandering around and I'm hearing the footsteps of the audio of Alex. And I'm like, I sort of remember this, but it's been like 3 years. And I can hear her say, like, basically there's like this audio cue, which is basically like, I can't turn back now. I can't turn back now. Like, it was something like that over and over. And I kept like brute forcing it until I got out of that sequence. So I wish that had worked as intended. But apparently this game is pretty buggy. I got scot-free the first time I played it, but this time I'm going through on the Steam Deck. So, user experience may vary.
Yeah, we didn't cover where we're playing.
No, we didn't. Steam Deck for Flora. Katie?
PS5.
I'm on Xbox Series X.
Oh.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I've had minimal issues. I don't think I can really think of anything major.
No, camera pulls you sometimes, like your focus in a weird way, but that affects probably everybody.
Yeah, I think that's just
my only real technical complaint.
Not great, but yeah, no, haven't had any issues.
And it's too bad, Flora, because this whole section, the paranoia that Mac feels about his decision with people, everybody's talking about him. He walks by a newsstand at one point, and the newspaper is like in his face about what happened.
I kind of wanted it to go further. I loved
it, the whole paranoia.
I wanted it to push it further, because it yeah, you got that he was paranoid and you had that, but and you had the cool thing with the security monitor. But I was like, I want more of this, because I was like, we can go a lot of places with this, and we did like a couple things and then stopped, and I kind of wanted more.
And it is unfortunate that the choice was so binary. It seemed of calm Mac down or walk away.
Yeah,
this man is literally having a panic attack, and I know he's a jerk and a rat, but come on, are you going to be that inhuman and walk away? And knowing the results of 4% of players walked away, that to me says bad binary decision.
Yeah, my stats were close to that too. And And also just pragmatically, like, it's more useful if you calm him down and hear what he has to say. And, like, it's obvious he's not the chief villain here. So on multiple levels, it doesn't make any sense to do that. Mm-hmm. Like, what would have happened? Because you get a lot of stuff happens after you calm him down, and, like, that just doesn't happen. We just walk away. Like, I'm like, how does that even... I'm sure, you know, they figure it out. It works out, obviously. But I was like, we're missing out on a lot of stuff. Whereas, like, do you walk away? Do you get anything out of that? Like, that balances out with the content that you get from calming him down? I feel like you don't. I feel like nothing happens.
Yeah. Once you find out what's going on in his head, which probably was obvious to most folks of like, oh, there's something actually happening here with Max that's more than meets the eye. The last part of this is encountering Ryan, who you've been sort of keeping at arm's length the entire episode. He wants to chat. He's texting you to chat. You go and find him at the place where Gabe died. His aura is beet red because he's, you know, affected by remorse and rage and despair, and this is when you decide how you're gonna take him, how are you going to react to this entire thing, because it seems like you've not had a one-on-one conversation since it happened. And so I can imagine, if I'm getting in y'all's head, you did the same thing I did, but I want to know, like, what was your tact with him?
I was just like, I don't know. I went with the, like, empathetic, forgiving route of, like, you must feel terrible, and, like, this is a lot, and, you know, like, he's going through something. Just because it's her brother that died doesn't mean that he's not going through something. And also the fact that he is the one who cut the rope, because basically Gabe was tethered to Alex and Ethan. So, like, him going down was going to drag them both down with him, and Ryan is the one who cut the rope and basically gave up on Gabe to save the other two. So he has, you know, turmoil about that. Yeah, I went the, like, empathy and forgiveness, because what else was I going to do?
Yeah, you don't really get, like, the option to, like, beat him up psychologically because of this. Like, this is a horrible decision. How could you? But it's rather about, like, where you want to put the focus of the emotional healing for him. And I kind of took the route of, like, I can tell this guy's beating himself up, and, like, he's holding himself accountable. So if there's any way to, like, diffuse those thoughts and be like, you're being really hard on yourself, or, like, you made the right call, instead of saying, like, you saved me, or, like, what, you have the option to kind of make it about yourself. Or make it, like, about Gabe or whatever. But it felt like he's being way too obviously hard on himself, given the circumstances. Like, yeah, I can understand I would be hard on myself too, but, like, this is one of those things where it's easy to give someone else advice, maybe impossible to take that advice on your own. But yeah, I felt like all of those options were functionally simpler. I just chose to focus on him.
Which is the case with, I think, a lot of the dialogue. I feel like most of the dialogue is like, we're going to get to the same place. It's just like the flavoring is a little different. But the end result you're still going to end up talking about like Canada geese and how they're restricted and you can't harm them. And we're going to be laughing at clouds. Like, we're still going to get there, I assume. Maybe you won't. Maybe, I don't know. Is that an optional thing? Flora's nodding. Can that not happen?
No. Sorry, I'm not trying to confirm that. I just have
Canada geese.
Very specific. Yeah, like, I have the one piece of hate mail that I've ever received as a writer about games, and the only piece I've ever received, it was about Untitled Goose Game. I published the review, and I have this quick anecdote in my opening paragraph about I wrote Canadian geese. Someone came in, like some bird aficionado, and wrote this length diatribe about how it's actually the Canada goose and how offensive that is to Canadians that I would get that wrong. And anyway, this whole scene felt like it was tailor-made to me a little bit, because, like, the joke, like, the thing is playing on is his ignorance about the Canada goose.
You felt very attacked.
A little bit.
So they were.
So wait, hold on. We're definitely gonna have to include that as a resource in the notes here.
Oh
it's
yeah.
Untitled Goose Game Review from 2019. If you want to read Flora's review, and you didn't correct it, I don't think you wrote Canadian geese flew several hundred miles, and that's the wrong way to refer to them, right?
Yeah. No offense to the person who took the time to write me in, but that was not worth going back to edit. So.
Were you talking about a singular goose and you called it a geese, or were you trying to refer to multiple geese?
Can I quote you, Flora, here?
You may.
A few years ago, Canadian geese flew several hundred miles south to where I live for the winter, but the gaggle never migrated back.
Basically,
I wouldn't be insulted. You said gaggle. That's the appropriate way to refer to plural geese.
And you were talking about multiple geese. This is silly. I mean, as most, internet hate is, it's usually
Canada
pretty
geese.
silly. Instead of Canadian. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
but
because they're not Canadian. They're just
it doesn't
Canada
matter.
geese.
That's nitpicky nonsense.
I mean, were they flying to Canada? They would technically be Canadian Canada geese, right?
If for most of their year, they spend their time here, then up in Canada, then they would be Canadian. But regardless, immediately though, I was like, oh no, you can't harm a Canada goose. So I'm like, right away. And then he was like, so then I told him it's illegal and the Mounties are going to come after you. And I was like, yeah, that's right. It's a thing.
Our greatest export. We
I
don't
guess.
export them. They're here. They protect us here.
They leave. And then
this
come
whole
back.
section was great. And then his aura starts to shine gold. And that's, where you get to... Alex doesn't even know what it is. She's like, I don't know what this feeling is. And yeah, I guess
Which
you're right.
seems
Like,
ridiculous.
Ryan's going to be the other romanceable. What do you mean is ridiculous?
How is that the first time that she's seen joy? It's the first time ever? Like, walking around town, she could have
she's
seen
had a rough
joy.
life.
Yeah, but she exists in the world that joy occasionally happens. Occasionally. Like, you don't have... Just because she grew up in, in the system and this and that, she still would, like... I don't know. I'm sure at some point she went to the mall and somebody at the mall was happy. There had to have been somebody.
But listen, quick thing. You and I don't know. Flora knows things that we don't know. In my mind, it's like we don't know the full extent of what this aura power is. Could this gold joy feeling be, this is joy that affects me, therefore it's super joy? Then, therefore, I feel good about it? We don't know what her powers are like, right?
I guess.
I think my interpretation of this, I agree with Katie's intuition on this 100%. I just want to start with that.
Thank you.
My intuition of how to explain this is that Alex's emotional powers have, up until this point, been largely like interfering with her mental well-being. They have basically put her in 8 years of, I guess, psychiatric treatment. We don't have all the details, at least as of episode 2. And so I wonder if, because they presented themselves as disorder symptoms, that's all she knows her powers to be, are these negativity sort of emotions that have caused her to withdraw from other people. And maybe because she knows that when she's around someone like Mac in episode 1 who's throwing punches, she will lose control and throw punches too. Maybe she's withdrawn from the potential to experience as much joy as we take for granted. I can feel my back breaking under the stretch of this, but that's kind of how I read it, maybe.
We experienced the super joy one more time at the true Wake for Gabe, where they let up a lantern in the air, Ryan and her and everyone. I don't know how you feel, but this is the CW moment for me, where I was just like, oh, this is the teen drama where somebody dies and Band of Horses is playing Life is Strange version. And I know it's somebody's death that's involved here, but I kind of loved it.
I just kept on thinking they're going to cause a fire, but that's where my brain was the whole time.
I mean, I was thinking of Tangled, so we were all across the spectrum here. I'm pretty sure Life is Strange 2 has another torch lantern scene as well. It's been more years since I've played that, but I'm pretty sure this is a trope now in the Life is Strange games.
Nice.
So you're saying in double exposure there will be a lantern?
If there's not, I'm going to send them hate mail about Canada geese.
Any final thoughts here about the episode's called Lantern 2, duh. Does anybody have any final thoughts here about episode 2 Lantern for Life is Strange True Colors?
I just want to talk about how walking around the town you can run into multiple people who are feeling whatever, and then you hear their thoughts and so on. But there's enough times where you run into like two people, like a pair of people who know each other in some capacity, whether they're like partners or friends or whatever, or coworkers, and they are having a conflict of sorts, and then you can kind of listen in on both persons' thoughts. And it really just reminded me of like how important communication is, and just like sometimes saying how you feel, because like there's a couple who are running a store and the store is not doing well and she's stressed about it and he's trying to help her make her feel better. So he keeps on like kind of like lightening it up and like making jokes and stuff. And he's like, I don't know how to help her. Like internally, he's like, I don't know how to help her. So this is all I can do. So this is what I'm doing. And then her internal monologue is he keeps on making a joke of this and our entire lives are going to burn down. And how could he do this? And I'm like, if you both just talked about what you were thinking, none of this would be happening. Yeah. And there was like multiple examples of that. And I was like, hey, sometimes it's good to be like, cards on the table. This is what I'm feeling, even more so than like what I'm thinking, right? Like these are my fears and doubts. And then the other person might understand, it's just, but I was like, communication, it's important. Multiple examples throughout the town.
Well said. I could learn that lesson in real life. So
yeah, same.
I think we all can.
The one thing I want to, I'll add some snaps too. The one thing I'd like to add is just a quote. I'm not going to give you any context, but when I signed on to this episode, I gave you one quote. The other quote that I wrote down is, "When did you start needing a PhD to smoke pot?" Yes,
the dispensary was fun, wasn't it? I had a good time looking around the dispensary.
Yeah.
And like also you find out little things. Sometimes it's just like funny little nuggets like that where Alex is like, my God, weed's gotten complicated. And then there's other stuff in the dispensary where like you find out that Gabe hasn't been sleeping. And he only sleeps like 3 hours a night, and like that he was having trouble. And I'm like, oh, you wouldn't have found that if you hadn't nosed around the dispensary. But then, there's also little jokes that are fun. I like there's a mixture of kind of what you get when you look at the objects that are strewn around.
Actually, one more thing now that I think about it, and it's only because you brought up the dispensary. In the final scene, the lantern scene, we see everyone radiating this emotion of joy, except for one character. What do we make of that?
Oh, snap!
We probably should observe the little, like, I don't know, blue aura.
Typhon Mine Lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's going on there? What do we think so far?
So earlier in the episode, something we didn't mention, her name's Diana.
I think, Diane.
Where did we meet her?
We meet her because she's with Ducky in the first episode. But in this episode,
that's right.
you have the chance to walk by her, and I don't know if it's because you are looking at a poster or you come out of a store, but either way, you have a moment with her, I think coming out of one of the stores, and she gives you a very cold... you can hear inside her aura say that's the sister of the man who died, and she gives a very cold like, I'm so sorry for your loss, and then sort of walks away. I don't remember if she represents the company in that moment and gives you a company line, but it was very cold, and I hadn't thought about it until you mentioned it, Flora.
Anything on that, Katie?
I didn't really notice that she had done anything odd, because I am terrible in those types of situations, and I'm like, I cringe at like what I'd say to people when they're experiencing something terrible. I don't know, maybe it's fine, but I always think I'm saying the wrong thing. So when I hear someone saying kind of like a stock response to a death in someone's life, that I'm like, yeah, I don't know, people do that. So it didn't strike me as abnormal. I didn't notice it. So I'm glad that you brought it up. I obviously noticed her at the end. I was like, I'm assuming that she works for Typhon. I'm going to go out on a crazy leap here and say that. But yeah, I was like, oh, okay, that's our little nugget to prelude to chapter 3.
She's a lobbyist, right?
Probably.
It's hard.
I think
to really
she
say
was. Didn't she say positive things? Didn't she say stuff about the mine in the first chapter? I don't remember.
She's got her big Typhon Mine pin on her lapel, and she gives me big lobbyist vibes. So,
the one thing I will say is, if you consider the shop that she's leaving, which is the dispensary, then you might put, I think, some of the rest together there. So, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, well, we're going to take a CBD gummy and save our thoughts for Chapter 3.
She left the form, didn't she? For she had just dropped off the form for Charlotte to sign or not sign. Astute, Flora. Very astute.
Almost like she's played this video game before.
Yeah, almost like I put this together the first time, which I did not.
Yeah, I need to give you more credit. We're going to come back next week with Chapter 3, Monster or Mortal. But in the meantime, you can do a couple of things for us. You can follow all things Left Behind Game Club in our Discord at leftbehindgame.club/discord. We'll be talking about this when this series hits weekly. And so you can find info about the show there. You can also follow us on Twitter at Left Behind Club, because that's the best way to find out about new episodes coming down the pipe, since we are now a non-regular show. Flora, where can folks find you on the internet, and anything you want to plug today?
The best place people can find me is epiloguegaming.com. You can check out all my articles, focusing mostly on indie things right now, but might be creeping up on the end of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, so I might have something in the pike for that too. Just check our website, epiloguegaming.com, if you want to see my thoughts.
Love, and like I said, we'll link out to your Untitled Goose Game review, so maybe folks can start there.
Honk.
Katie?
I am on Twitter still. I am Lesperak, Lesperak. That's where I do my writing, which is just being like, yay, Elden Ring and cats.
That's a good Twitter account.
It's a great
criminally
Twitter.
underfollowed.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm going to plug PAX West because I'm the only person between the three of us going to that. So when you hear this, it'll be in a couple weeks' time, doing a couple things. So if you're around on day 0 of PAX on Thursday, August 29th at 7:30, I'll be at Hopvine Pub doing video game trivia in a bar. So if you're a fan in Seattle and you want to play some video game trivia, you don't even need a PAX badge for that. But if you have a PAX badge, Friday, August 30th at 9 p.m. in the Frog Theater. We're doing the panel version of this with an all-star crew: Roger Reichart, Jill Grote, Asa Greenriver, Stephanie Klimov, Adam Gumbert, and Baron Jones. It's going to be a hoot.
Well done.
It's a fab crew. I'm very lucky. You can track all of that at Jacob McCord on Instagram or on Twitter. And that's our show for now. So with that, my friends, I say, and that's one less episode left behind.
Do you feel like you're the only person in your circle who wants to go deep about video games regularly?
We were like that too. Until now.
Welcome to Crossplay Conversations, the brand new bi-weekly topical video game podcast from Luke Lewis,
Joseph Hooper,
and Jacob McCord.
With many years of breaking it down separately on shows like the Left Behind Game Club, Player Podcast, and Lukewarm Games, the gang is finally coming together to publish their gaming group chat in audio form every other week.
Expect roundtable reviews of the latest games, profiles of upcoming indies, and insightful conversations about essential topics in the video game industry. All with a mostly positive, insightful, and fun style.
Help us out by subscribing on your podcast platform of choice to get the first episodes delivered straight to your feed.
And follow us on Twitter at Crossplay Convos for updates about the show.
Cheers and happy gaming.